Sound check. Sound check. Is that coming through? Sound check. Sound check. It's hard to tell from here. Yes. Is this Ken? Hello? Hey, Ken. This is Bill. I'm at church. I just had a quick question because we're firing up everything for the child protection training up here. What's the what's the button press sequence for feeding the sound over to the camera software? I'm using the pastor's mic headset. Say that again. Sorry. No, I can hear it. It's just that I want to make sure it's feeding over to the camera software. Like you know how sometimes it doesn't feed over. Number 10. Okay. Number 10. Let's see. Yeah, he's unmuted. Okay. All right. Oh, I didn't know you guys were coming. So okay. All right, that works.
sound.
Hello? Hello?
Yep.
Oh, I do. Is there? Oh my goodness, you guys are not going to want to hear. I'm going to put it down.
They can adjust it up there.
Yeah, you might want to turn it way down. Okay. Okay. I don't really feel, I want to be down with you guys. I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay, and they did this fantastic job getting me all set up over here. Sorry. They're like, yeah, I think there's an outlet over there. This laptop will go out on me real quick. Can you bring it over here? And you know what? I probably won't even look at this, but it's my security blanket. You know what I mean?
I agree with you.
I have organization on here and your contact information. How many of you have a phone that you can do a QR code? I have a pre and post survey that is required for me to have the people that I present to. Ken, am I on? Okay. I may do better with this than the ear gadget. Okay, sounds good. All right, so I am going to start one on this side and one on that side. And, okay, if I can just have, I have to submit it to ODH, the Department of Health, so I need it. So if that's okay, while you do your talk, and then I can, thank you. You guys do this every year. You come together because you do some work with youth and a capacity here through the church. That's awesome. I love hearing that and knowing. I know that in my professional work, I don't get to always see this, so this does my heart good. I know this community does great work. I am a transplant, I call myself, but I can't believe I'm already 10 years going on here. Huh. Oh, you can't hear me? Oh, okay. Sorry. You couldn't hear me? I feel like I talk so loud that you guys are going to be like this. So I have to give a shout out to Julie Halfhill because she had recommended me. So if you go, Julie, when you see her next time, really? Lisa Winkler? No. I have got to work with Julie. We came together through the work that she's doing through Kinship, through the Willow House and Hope Bridge. And so children in kinship placements or children's services, foster adoption, have always and will always hold a place in my heart. And that's why when the health department got this grant, I was like, I'm going to apply for that. I want to do that work because it's talking about trauma and the impact that I saw with those children and those families that I worked with. And I would get in this like crisis panic mode when I would see, like, am I doing good work? Am I helping make the change? But I knew it needed to happen at a bigger level. So to get out into the community and be able to talk about trauma, talk about resiliency, and that's really where it's at, is making that change and helping build and embrace those families, those youth, to be that individual that can impact them and take them down a different road and give them different opportunities. And I feel like in this capacity that you guys are in, it's that natural role, and your heart is here. And for that, I'm thankful. So I'm going to, unless, did Marge want us, are you wanting to do a little something before I roll into my, okay. Okay. Yes, and I kind of just, that naturally just kind of happened when I started talking.
That's all right. That is no problem at all. I just want to thank you all for taking the time to come and be here today and show what your dedication is to the children here at Christ Community Church, because you're giving up a Saturday. It's a lovely Saturday. I'm sure you could be out doing lots of other things other than being here. Mostly being curled up in a blanket, reading a book, drinking a warm cup of coffee. But, but I wanted to thank you for coming. Couple little housekeeping things for all of you. I wanted to ask you to help be responsible here for some things. You are often the ones in children's church or in Sunday school or in the nursery or helping with other things. When you leave the building, all the doors should be closed. Every door that will close should be closed. Every light should be turned off. So if you leave an area and you're the last one out, close doors, turn off lights, please. The other thing is that we're seeing a lot of people who are opening a water bottle, taking 2 sips, sitting it down, doing something else, forgetting about it, and leaving it behind. So if you see those sitting around, please pick things up and try to keep track of your bottle or whatever else you have. We'd appreciate that. So today, Lisa's told you who she is and what she does. As I was recovering from my knee surgery in January, I was thinking about this training and what are we going to do this year, because I try so hard to make sure it's something different. Nobody wants to come and sit through the same training year after year after year. And there are always things changing with the way that children live in the world today. The things that are happening in the world today are always changing, so we need to learn new things. And I sent Julie a text, and I said, you know, she's got a lot of contacts and stuff, and I said, you know, I was just thinking about this, do you have any recommendations? And she called me and she said, when your text came in, I'd picked up my phone to call you, to tell you about what Lisa's doing. So I think that God wanted us to hear what Lisa had to say today. But before we go any further, I would like to ask Pastor Scott to open us in prayer, please.
We thank you, Father, for your grace today. We ask for your help to understand what's being taught today, and we ask that you would give us the strength to carry it out. We ask that you would help strengthen Lisa as well as she gets ready to speak. We thank you for all of this, and we pray this in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you. And I will turn it over to Lisa.
All right. So here, the QR code on the slide presentation. Oh, the slide presentation. Go to the QR code. You guys might have to hear our. Oh, okay. Well, we will just work with this. So we will. All right. So I've shared with you where I'm coming from. I kind of want to get a feel for who's working in like with the littles and who's working with more of the youth, the teens, who's working with the younger kiddos, like in like the child care, the nursery. You're okay. Oh, I have not made it to one of those yet. That is a goal of mine. Julie always shares with me, and I just keep wanting to come, and I have a conflict. Okay, same there. So the rest of you do you do a lot of youth activities with teens? Okay. Okay. So, and do you guys do a vacation Bible school? Yes. So that are oftentimes encompasses youth that the family doesn't attend church here, right? And so a lot of times maybe those youth not knowing the family, you might see behaviors in them that you're like, what's going on? You can kind of pinpoint things maybe through this slide presentation or our talk, I should say, you'll find that, oh, maybe that's why there might be a kiddo that you worked with and you just couldn't understand what was triggering this kid's behaviors. Well, what we're going to talk about today is ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. Has anybody ever heard of adverse childhood experiences or ACEs? So you do. You have heard of them, and have you seen, I'm sure then, in individual youth that you've worked with, the impact of them. So ACEs was a study done back in the 90s with Kaiser Permanente and the CDC. And what they found was a significant correlation between childhood trauma and chronic health and behavioral health. So much so that the more ACEs you had, these initial 10 ACEs, if they happened in the home, you were more likely to have heart disease. You were more likely to have the longevity of your life up to 20 years, they found in this study. If you had 7 ACEs, you're more likely for mental health and suicide ideation as well. So with that said, they have also led into how your community can impact, as well as environmental traumas can impact your behavior and health. So what the goal of this training that I'm going around doing in the community is to help build resiliency, to educate on what trauma, adverse childhood experiences can look like, and to also say that it doesn't have to be the destiny of those children, that resiliency, if we come around our youth and embrace them, we can help make change. So I do want to share the 10 ACEs, because I think if you look over these, you will find that, oh, I have that one, or I might have experienced that one, because ACEs are normal, but in our social economic lower poverty, we unfortunately do see a higher number of ACEs. So that can be from neglect, physical, mental, emotional. It can be physical abuse, verbal abuse, and a lot of times there's also the household environment, where if there's an incarcerated parent or mental health of a parent, I have seen so many of these impact, especially the kinship families. Oftentimes there's addiction in the family, and that's why the grandparents end up with the children. Do any of you know anybody that are raising their grandchildren, or an aunt or an uncle? And it's already a hard job to raise a child without those ACEs, but you add those ACEs. And I know personally for me, I know somebody who adopted from birth, and the trauma that that child's behaviors, the trauma that that parent experienced, that then led to this child having experiences. It's been a difficult road for that individual. Not that she would change it, but it is not an easy road. So I will have these available for you guys to look at. I want to make sure that I cover everything I want in this. So we know that these events can happen, again, like I said, here we go. Yay, yay. Right here, that one, maybe you can see that. So those family home environment ACEs that happen in the home are number one. That's the tree. Then the community, that's the root of that tree, which the irony of this, I also work with youth leadership teams I put together working with all three schools, Malvern, Conotton Valley, and Carrollton, and I have a fabulous group of 24 students that I work with from all of those schools, and they developed our logo for Empower Youth Coalition that I help lead, and they came up with the tree as our logo within Carroll County, because they said our community is the root that can help support our families, and we are the leaves on that tree. So the irony of this picture when it came up in the presentation. So either your community can help that family thrive and grow and be a healthy tree, or it can bring poverty or lack of housing, or those are transportation, that's another one. And then you have the environmental impact that can happen as well. And that would be like the pandemic, like how that hit us. That hit me personally hard. My mom was in a nursing home and with dementia, and she passed away. and not being able to have that connectedness that you would typically have had with your loved one when they pass. So that, when I hear pandemic, that kind of triggers for me that memory. Maybe each of you have a memory from that. The individuals from the hurricane in North Carolina, those are examples of environmental traumas that you can experience. Am I filling in blanks and explaining things okay? Everybody good? Okay. Because just stop me, ask for clarification. So again, ACEs, the study from Kaiser Permanente, we know the impact that it can have on us, on our health, long-term, short-term, that it actually, what they've also found out in studies is that it can rewire a child's brain because it's molding and changing, and those synapses are, growing and dying off. And so that's happening. But this is always, I always like the upside. What we know, and they have found out scientifically, that our brain is moldable. So it can change if you put in that good stuff. So again, it doesn't have to be their destiny, right? That trauma that they're being impacted by, there are protective factors, or what we call them, that you can put in place that can help build that internal resiliency and drive that an individual can have that says, I can, I will, right? And the biggest thing is, and the one that I'm out promoting, is adults. Just that change maker that you are, and you are, all of you, when you intersect with youth, can make a difference. So being mindful of what our words are, how we support them, not putting an expectation on them, and stopping and saying, maybe not what's wrong with this child, but what happened to them. And it's not giving them an out, but it's understanding. And I think sometimes we're quick to go back to how we were raised. And I know, even as a parent, I'm going to go kind of sideways on this, but I know I was raised a certain way. So I started acting, doing like my mom did. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, this feels right, but this doesn't feel right. And I had to mold and assess what I wanted to do, what I remember being healthy for me as a child, right? What helped build me up as an individual, and what I became fearful of, or maybe it didn't help build my self-esteem. Everybody, are you thinking of times in your own life that maybe that's happened? So we're going to talk a little bit about stress. So there was a doctor from Harvard who actually tweezed out what stress looks like, because we all can say, oh, I've been under stress, right? But we don't always look at stress as a positive, but it can be. We have had incidences in our life that it can actually help benefit and help us grow as an individual when we go through experiences, then that we have a positive outcome, right? So, I had a coworker that was getting married, and oh my gosh, the stress she was emulating onto me. I was like, take a breath. It's going to be okay, right? And then here comes the day, and it's a celebration, but all that preparation, maybe getting ready to graduate, maybe for a teen it could be getting their driver's license, right? Buying a home, all of those things are positive stress. Then there is tolerable stress. So tolerable stress can be those losses, a loss of a pet or a loss of a loved one or a friend, right? Maybe moving. So they're a little more long-lasting, a little more intense. But what you find is that you have supports around you, and that can make all the difference. I know for me, when I'm going through something big, knowing I have somebody there to just listen, right? I don't necessarily always need their advice in a situation. I just need them to listen. So what does that look like when it comes to having those ACEs? As a child, you're going home from school. School oftentimes is their safe place, or getting to come to vacation Bible school, or getting to go to a camp that they can be exposed to adults who can show them that compassion. That I've had youth that I've worked with, children that they didn't know if mom was going to be out of bed because of her mental health, so depression being so significant that they would be making their peanut butter and jelly sandwich if mom had gotten to the grocery store, right? And it's a single family home. And then there's 3 of them in the home, so they're not only making themselves a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, they're making their siblings the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches too, right? They're coming to school in dirty clothes because mom's not washing laundry, you know. And I will say that I have seen here where the schools embrace and support. There's kids washing their clothes at school. They're getting showers at school. And I'm so thankful that they are willing to do that. The schools are beyond just the education anymore. So the toxic stress, again, is where these youth have no support, and it's significant. It's neglect, it's abuse, it's violence. That's another one. Where I worked before up north, I worked in transitional housing as a child advocate, and I had a family. The mom left a abusive relationship, 4 children, and she would lay by the door. The one child said, "Yeah, mom would lay by the door with the gun, and so to protect us, so that he wouldn't come and hurt us." So then they're having to go to school and try to learn math, but they can't. You know, they're what we'll talk about. I'll show you this really cool hand model about the brain and what happens. They're in survival mode. Their fear center is what's going to keep. It's just like on high alert constantly. They can't calm. They can't just do the normal. So trauma, toxic stress is when something happens to the body that's too much, too fast, too soon, and overwhelms the body and can create trauma. But the one thing about trauma is that it's unique. So what might happen to me, like I came from a divorced family. So my youngest sibling was only 2, but I was 7, and I remember it, okay? And I know that divorce is something that seems so much more common, but when you're a child in it, in your perception, I caused this divorce. You know, it sounds so skewed, but really, that child, it was a lot more on me, and I carried a lot more about it, where my 2-year-old sister didn't remember. And then I had a brother who remembers a little bit, but just the adjustment, the transition, and some of the things that we had happen while my parents were married. So, again, ACEs are common, but it's how we are able to move forward and who we have in our life to help us through those. And just to remember that, as we're going to go into, our trauma, toxic stress, our body is, our brain specifically, is built to keep us safe and protected. So what that looks like back in the day, or if you're out in the woods and you come across a bear, looks a lot different than that child that might be in your daycare or youth group or come into Vacation Bible School. You might not always be able to tell what can trigger their behavior. So let's move on to this. So this was Dr. Siegel. He came up with this because he said, it got too cumbersome trying to manage to take this model of a brain, which is pretty cool around to show people. So he came up with this, and I really like it. And when I worked with foster youth in Summit County who were aging out or had aged out, significant trauma, if they're PC, if they're permanent custody, that they've had some significant trauma. So we had a therapist come in and talked about how trauma impacts your brain, and they were almost like, it was this, it's not just me, there's a reason why this is happening, this is a reason why I react like I do. Again, not justifying the behaviors, but understanding them, and then helping those youth learn coping skills, learn to identify what they can do to help regulate themselves. Because what happens in the brain to keep them safe and protected is that they become dysregulated. So can you forward to where it's the first hand model of the brain? Right here. Well, back. Yep. So we're going to use this as the brainstem. What happens in the brainstem is your heart beating, your breathing. You don't even have to think about it. And you're getting the very generic scientific version. But you'll get the concept. So fear center, thumb, that's the limbic. This is our survival. This is what kept our ancestors alive, right? So then we have the cortex, which we're going to use these top fingers. That's where our empathy and our learning and our social interaction all happens. So when all is well in the world, it embraces that fear center, and you can think and go about your day, right? Play, learn, work, whatever it is. But like walking in the woods and seeing that bear. And I actually was walking in Yellowstone with my husband and my youngest son and his wife, enjoying the nature and all the beauty around us. And all of a sudden, a moose comes out from nowhere. And my fear center said, "Get out of here and now." And I ran and left them in the dust. And I was behind a tree, and when I realized, literally the next thing I know, I'm standing behind this tree, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even try to save my son. What's up with me? I'm a terrible person. But anyhow, it was survival mode. And you guys have heard of fight, flight, freeze, and we have a fawn. And I do have a slide of that because I think we're all used to that very strong, aggressive reaction when your fear centers knocked your thinking brain offline, because that's what it is. You're offline. You flipped your lid, as it says in the next slide, right? So when we experience big emotions, stressful situations, we can flip our lids. Even if we haven't had trauma, we all have flipped our lid a time or two. And if you tell me you haven't, I'm going to question it, because you got to tell me what your secret is. So, meaning our fear center takes control and our thinking brain goes offline. So those kiddos that say, why did you do that? Now, I'm not saying all of them, but we got to stop and think, why did you, oftentimes we'll say, what did you do that for? And they're like, I don't know. Well, I don't know. I don't know why I didn't try to save my son. I was protecting myself, and for some reason, in a situation where they're feeling unsafe and vulnerable, and they flip their lid, they aren't thinking. So, this is called dysregulation, when your fear center is the one that is doing the reaction. I guess I've gone through. Anybody have anything they want to add, or have a story of when they've maybe experienced a kiddo flipping their lid? Anybody had that happen? Yeah? Okay. Never. Yes. I think we could probably, I've been in classrooms. I've been, unfortunately, from a lot of the youth that I've worked with. And this was very disheartening, because when they would go from being in the foster system, the plan for that transition was probably the most vulnerable place for these kids. I got kids into homeless shelters because I would struggle to try and get kids into their own housing. But how do you get a kid that hasn't even graduated? Now the system allows them to stay in the foster home until they graduate. But oftentimes an 18-year-old kid that's experienced a lot of trauma, they're all grown, and nobody's going to tell me anymore what I am going to do, and they fall fast. And so I saw several when they would be in the county jail, and what did you do? And they didn't really understand the ramifications of that. That now try to get a job. One young lady one time, she's like, I don't understand, I can't get a job, I just want to be a cashier. Well, if they look at your record and you have stole, they're not going to put you in charge of their money, right? Or, so I'm kind of getting off track, but there are so many young people that are vulnerable, and how can we, and you are, stepping in, and maybe those kiddos come, you can say one thing or do one thing that can change the way they feel about themselves, and push them, to motivate them to want to overcome their adversities. So I was going to talk about what you see, or what maybe you feel when your lid is flipped. Because it comes out in physical, right? Our heart, our sweating, our kids tell me that it feels like their head's going to explode. But some of these, if we can go to the next slide, this is the one that I talked about. Oh, shoot, it's not big enough. So, so some of these, like the fight, that aggression, the flight that they're running, they're going to avoid, the freeze and the fawn, that dissociation, like they're just zoned out. If you ever tried to engage a youth and they just like pay attention, I'm trying to talk to you, but they just are zoned out, I guess is the only way I can explain it. Does that resonate with anybody? Do you know what I'm talking about when I so some of these very much people pleasers. They want to do everything and they want to do it perfect. Parentified is another one where, and they also, like, have you ever had those kids that you just met them and little ones, and they'll jump up on your lap and they're hugging on you? That's actually a response from, of trauma as well, which you don't, I think those are ones that you don't typically think of. So when you have a dysregulated kid, what are you going to do? Or even, you know, if you come across an adult, because we have a lot of adults that haven't addressed their trauma. And so that instability that they have in their life and trying to raise children if they have children or maintain a job, I don't know why I can't. Well, when you go off on your boss, you're not going to be able to maintain your job, right? Because they're reacting to the emotion. A lot of times, I mean, I know myself, there have been many times, husband, kids, can't talk right now because I'm going to talk from emotion, and the emotion I'm feeling isn't very good right now, right? So let's come back to this. Find your thing that you need to do, think about it, and come back and have a conversation. And the other piece of that is in a conversation when you have communication, hearing both sides, and staying regulated within that. So regulate, relate, and then reason. Those are the steps. Regulate, relate, and then reason. So what does that look like? So if you have a kid and you know, they're having a meltdown, if you will, what are you going to do? Not try to straighten up or, you know, let's take them and go for a walk, maybe, and get them to calm down, right? We're going to, I say take a walk because I know that was one that I could do oftentimes with kids, and I would teach them the breathing. Breathing is something you can do everywhere, and I do that on a regular basis, and I know what I need to maintain just on a daily. So going for walks with my cats and my dogs and doing my deep breathing, being out in nature is something. So helping model those. So any of the youth and the kids that I go into school and talk with, I talk about what I do. I'm that model for them to say, this is what works for me. Figure out what works for you now and start using that in your day-to-day. So then you can relate and you can talk about the situation once they're calmed down and making them feel a part of it, that they're supported by you, and then address the concern. Because I've been in classrooms where kids start flipping desks, or a kid brought in rocks from the playground and starts pinging them all over the place, right? We have all these other kiddos we got to keep safe, and yet we need to take care of this dysregulated kid. One of the simplest things to be mindful of, if it's an adult or a youth that you're working with, and they're just feeling those strong emotions and are dysregulated, is to do the safety triangle. And that is like a little guy get down on their level, right? So that you're having that eye contact. Like coming in, and I've had plenty of young people, you would think like just maybe a touch on the shoulder, oh, almost get the elbow or the punch. It's just their reaction. It's that fear center, right? So hands off, give them their space. Don't make them feel like you're trying to overtake them, or for your own safety too, right? But the tone of your voice and, the words that you're saying. Because saying calm down, if I'm in a mood and my husband tells me to calm down, you think I'm going to be calming down? I don't think so. I shouldn't tell stories on myself, should I? But, right? So be mindful of your words, your facial expressions. That's another thing he tells me. Lisa, you don't have to say anything. You're very expressionable. I can tell what you're thinking. I'm happy. It's all good. And this one, name it to tame it. So again, it's naming those emotions. I have an emotion wheel. I have several handouts of the brain model, emotion wheel that I have used with youth, that I think is really good. So like anger can have a lot more. It can go deeper than that, giving them a lot more adjectives to identify what they're feeling. It's a feeling of frustration. And I do this again with youth that I've worked with individually and in the prevention programming. I do really identifying emotions and making sure that it's okay to feel. I feel like we gotta be happy all the time. I tell the students and the youth I work with that you have to learn how to feel all those emotions within a good, healthy way, because feeling them and punching the wall, and being aggressive, that's not the way. How can you get that anger out? So when you see anger, aggression, risk-taking, oftentimes there's a lot of sadness under there. That really is this anger onion. There's a lot of fear, uncertainty. Is mom's boyfriend going to be there? Who, when he drinks, he's going to then start throwing things, become verbally abusive to the kids, to mom, police gonna come, the fear of being taken out of the home. Even though we can sit here and say we know that is what would be in their best interest, a child doesn't want to be taken away no matter how unhealthy it is for them from their parents, right? One of the biggest things I saw was those kiddos that aged out would go back to those parents that were still using, that were still hadn't dealt with their significant mental health. And that was a hard thing to see, and not be able to help support them to make those changes. So shifting our thinking, and we talked about that. Oh, this is a good one, which I feel like I've already mentioned this, but excusing behavior is far different than understanding. Our behaviors need for a safe connection are rooted in the science. Under no circumstances, trauma-informed care suggests that the behaviors are okay. So shifting our thinking to, instead of, right, to let's think what could have happened, what might be going on, instead of problem behavior, how have those behaviors helped them survive? And a lot of times you can see there's lying that happens there. There's sneaking food. Manipulation. Instead of what unmet needs were they having? What are they trying to gain from this? What barriers might they be experiencing when they're non-compliant? Communicating challenging, difficult behaviors. Describe neutral observations. Stating their name. I do not want to be here, and put on headphones. Somebody do that. All right. What is resilience? The process and outcome of successfully adapting to difficult or challenging life experiences through flexibility and adjustment to life demands. It doesn't happen in isolation. Not always being happy doesn't mean, and resilience acts as a buffer to lessen the long-term impact of stressors. So resilience, we're going to go over 5 resilience factors. It's not something we were born with. That was one thing I'd say, what do these kids? I would have brothers, same scenario. The one went off to college, the other one I was visiting in jail. What was the difference? Like, there's got to be this magic thing, right? But it was the opportunities that each had in their different situations once they were removed. But the biggest is safe, healthy others, adults like you guys are huge, huge change makers. My sister was working in Akron City schools her first year out of college, and she was the track coach. And she had a young lady come into her classroom, and she had on a turkey trot shirt, which is a race that happens at Thanksgiving. And she said, "Where'd you get that shirt?" And she said, "I ran a race and got it." And she's like, "Well, if you ran a race, why aren't you on my track team?" And I don't know. She said, "Well, I'll see you at practice." And she showed up, and then she showed up, and she showed up, because my sister asked that question. If she hadn't asked that question, and the thing is that girl was her state champ, and she got full ride scholarships to college. This girl never envisioned that in her life, but one simple acknowledgement and interest that she took in that young lady took her in a direction that probably wouldn't have happened, in my opinion. So I'm sure that you guys have your stories, and I know since you're all talkers, you would want to share with me, but I'll get us through this, okay? But think about it and give yourself that acknowledgement to say, I did something for a youth that I intersected with. If it's through what you do here or in your work, or if it's a neighbor. Okay. So, the second, sense of agency. This is where giving them a voice and opportunities, right? When we don't feel like we have the chance to share our voice or make choices, we don't feel seen, heard, or valued. So that's not just letting them pick, but like if there's opportunities where it could be this or that, allowing them to have those choices, right? For older youth, like our youth leadership team that I got together with yesterday, we talked about inequality and what that looks like. What are some of the disparities we have? And them having that voice, you could see it just ignited them. They felt important to be able to have that voice. So building agency through understanding emotions, removing stigma. This is where my brain, from I thought there was something wrong with me to my brain and my body are trying to survive. That was those foster youth that I worked with. When we talked about the hand model and gave them the opportunity to be educated on what happened to them, empowers young people. Sense of self, identifying what is unique. Oh, if I could just, even go back to the younger me when I was in school, these fourth graders that I go in and talk with, they're trying to fit in. They're trying to figure out where they belong. And I'm just like, own it. Own your uniqueness. Own that you are, you like woodworking with your grandpa, that you're into fishing, and you don't have to be into every sport, that you see that you have a strength in arts. Is that through drama? Is that through your music or painting? And really being that adult that encourages them to. A sense of meaning, having hope and purpose. And that's, again, all of us, I feel like. Resiliency is built on every individual person identifying that for themselves. So not even, some youth just that I worked with didn't see their future, and being able to give them that hope that they have opportunities in their future. And they would just shut them down time and time again. It was almost like they would self-sabotage because, oh my gosh, if I try and I fail, what is that going to look like? But sometimes we know as that adult trying to support them, you don't get it the first time or the second, you might get it the 10th time. Believe in yourself and have hope that you can achieve it. And a sense of belonging. So this is where, like, the youth group, to be a part of your church's youth group, to be a part of a team, a club. I always saw that. So when I was the Kinship Navigator for 4 years here in Carrollton, I really encourage mentoring and opportunities for camp. And a lot of the camps, I went to a conference and I had to have a unique thing to tell about Carrollton, and I was fairly new, but I was like, oh, we have the most camps of any county in the state of Ohio. So I feel like camps are such a huge opportunity, and the churches I would call, and the camps would give scholarships for the youth. And I had to hold the hand for the grandparent. But one, it was respite for the grandparents. And two, those kids, oh my gosh, I had a set of cousins. They lived together. And I took them to camp, and they were nervous because grandma couldn't take them. So I'm trying to talk through it with them. And dropped them off. 5 days later, go back. I couldn't get those kids to shut up. We did this, and I got to fish, and I got to swim and jump off the dock, and we sang around the fire, and they had their little Bible, and it filled my heart. So knowing that those opportunities, and they wanted to go back, and they went back for 3 more years. So great opportunities, a sense of belonging that they had. Very powerful. So that's a wrap. As far as just want to make sure that you understand adverse childhood experiences happen in the home. There's 10 that were initially in this study identified. I think to date they are adding more to those because like significant loss is another one I know that I have found with youth is pretty significant. The science that what toxic stress looks like on the brain, and I do have a handout with that, and then some of the strategies that I shared, like the safety triangle, right? The regulation. And then the 5 resiliency factors. So we do we have the opportunity to go back and do the pre-survey? So I guess that's really not, I guess, at least if we can do the pre, even though you guys already have the post, if we can do the pre and the post, even though that's not the way it's supposed to work, so I can get credit for doing this, because I do have to meet those requirements as well. I know that's and if you're having issues, I do have paper ones, but if you don't want to take it either, as long as I have the number that I've had here too. Did I get my sign-in sheets by chance? Okay, thanks. I do. Okay, I do. I have a handful of, here's the pre, and when you bring me down, don't worry about that front part. I don't even know why I put. Yeah, you can answer it on paper. You don't need to put your name or anything. None of this has identifies who you are. Do you want?
As you finish your surveys, once those are done, the handouts are back on the table beside what's left of the donuts and the goodies. If you have questions for Lisa, now is